I woke up to the sound of footsteps crunching on my gravel driveway, a sound that never belonged to anyone invited. My cabin sits at the edge of Lake Pine Ridge, tucked behind 2 acres of birch and pine, the kind of place where solitude isn't just preferred, it's earned. So when I peered through the blinds and saw a woman in high heels, clutching a clipboard, standing beside a man in a navy suit holding a "for sale" sign, my coffee nearly went airborne. They were staring at my porch like it was a listing photo. The man, all polished smile and realtor confidence, gestured toward the windows. "The view from here is amazing," he said. The woman, our neighborhood's self-appointed dictator, Karen, president of the HOA, nodded approvingly. "It'll sell fast. Once we get rid of all that clutter on his deck." Clutter. That was my canoe, my grill, and the rocking chair my grandfather built. I stepped outside, still in my flannel pajama pants, and said, "Can I help you too, or are you just trespassing for fun today?" Karen spun around with the kind of surprise only liars can fake. "Oh, we didn't think anyone was home," she said, smiling like she owned my oxygen. "This is Realtor Jeff. We're just assessing property values for the association." Jeff looked uncomfortable, eyes darting to his shoes. I was told the owner had approved a showing." "Funny," I said, "because the owner's standing right here, and the owner would have remembered approving a random realtor to sell his cabin." Karen's smile tightened into a sneer. "You know, technically, the HOA can request inspections for community improvement. This place doesn't exactly fit our neighborhood aesthetic." She said it like my hand-built cedar deck offended her soul. Jeff muttered something about miscommunication, and started pulling his sign out of the ground. Karen, though, wasn't done. "You could have at least let me know you were home," she huffed, as if my presence was the inconvenience. "I'm trying to raise property values here. A cabin like this, so rustic, brings down the look of the lakefront." I leaned against the post, amused. "So your solution was to sell it behind my back?" Her voice went shrill. "Don't be dramatic. I was simply helping you. If you moved into something modern, you'd thank me." She turned to leave, heels clicking like gunshots on the driveway, muttering something about ungrateful people. I watched her car disappear, a white Lexus that gleamed like entitlement itself, and decided 2 things. 1. I needed cameras installed yesterday. 2. I was going to play the long game. Over the next week, Karen's behavior became even bolder. HOA letters started arriving in my mailbox, 4 of them in 5 days. The first claimed my solar panels were unauthorized visual obstructions. The second demanded I remove my woodpile, visible from the common path. The third insisted my flagpole violated height symmetry with neighboring homes. The fourth accused me of disrupting neighborhood harmony with the sound of my chainsaw. I sent one reply: "You might be confusing neighborhood harmony with your personal aesthetic tyranny. Please stop harassing me." She didn't. The following Saturday, I caught her again. This time she'd brought a different realtor, a young woman with a drone camera buzzing above my yard. I stepped out before they reached the porch. "Smile for the lawsuit," I said, raising my phone. The realtor blanched, apologized, and left immediately. Karen stayed, arms crossed, jaw tight. "This property could be so much more," she said coldly. "You're wasting potential." "Whose potential?" I asked. "Yours? Or your resale commission?" Her face hardened, the kind of expression people wear when you've hit the truth dead on. "You wouldn't understand. Some of us actually care about the image of this neighborhood." "I care about peace and quiet," I said. "But you keep trespassing like it's an open house." That's when she smiled, not kindly, but with that glint of superiority that made my skin crawl. "You'll come around," she said. "Everyone does." That night, I poured a drink and sat on my porch, thinking. Karen wasn't just nosy, she was strategic. She'd been on the HOA board for years, using every rule, fine, and fake inspection to push out people she didn't like. Rumor had it she'd already forced 3 families to sell their lakefront homes under compliance pressure, all of which, coincidentally, sold to friends of hers. My cabin might have been next on her hit list, but I wasn't like her previous victims. I had patience, humor, and a petty streak as wide as the lake. I started small. I checked county property records. Her house was under her name, of course, complete with her personal cell number on file. Then I went through the HOA's public financial filings. Guess who'd recently billed consulting fees to the neighborhood fund? Karen. Then I visited a few realty websites, the same ones where she kept trying to list my property, and learned something fascinating. Anyone could submit a property listing request before verification. The following week, I got my revenge blueprint ready. First, I took a few professional-looking photos of her own house. She had posted them before on the HOA's community site: wide front lawn, perfect hedges, American flag centered like a magazine cover. I downloaded those and drafted the most absurd listing imaginable. Charming suburban dream. One owner, HOA royalty. Includes mandatory gossip quota, frequent male harassment, and free unsolicited opinions about neighbors. Listed at $1 million. Price negotiable. Then I deleted the extra zeros. $1. I uploaded it with her name, address, and that same phone number from county records. It went live on 3 major real estate platforms before noon. By evening, she was a celebrity. Her phone must have exploded with calls. The first hint came when her car screeched into my driveway around dusk. She stormed out, waving her phone like a weapon. "You think this is funny?" she screamed. "My house, my actual house, is listed for $1. People are calling non-stop." I sipped my coffee and looked confused. Weird. Maybe some hacker didn't like your community improvement initiatives. "Don't play dumb," she shouted. "They said I was the contact. They have my number." "Then you should probably call customer service," I said. "Seems like a serious issue." Her voice cracked with fury. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I didn't trespass on anyone's property twice in 1 week." She stomped back to her car, tires spitting gravel, and I could hear her still yelling into her phone as she drove away. By morning, the story had spread through the entire neighborhood group chat. People were sharing screenshots, laughing at the listing description, even bidding $2 as a joke. Someone made a meme. The realtors she'd used were furious, the HOA board was panicking, and Karen's carefully polished reputation began crumbling like wet drywall. I didn't need to lift another finger. Her vanity did the rest. That's when she made her biggest mistake. One that turned a neighborhood feud into a public meltdown I couldn't have scripted better if I tried. By the next morning, I woke to the symphony of chaos. My phone buzzed with messages from neighbors, half amused, half horrified. Someone had screenshotted the $1 listing and shared it in the town Facebook group, where it racked up over 200 comments overnight. "Is this real? Can I buy it in cash? Finally, a house I can afford in this neighborhood." The post had gone semi-viral, enough that a local real estate blogger picked it up. Karen's prestigious lakefront home was suddenly the internet's favorite bargain. I wasn't proud exactly, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't smile when I saw the headline: HOA president accidentally lists her own home for $1. Accidentally. Sure. By 9 a.m., I heard the Lexus again. The door slammed hard enough to make birds scatter from the trees. Karen came storming up my driveway in a red blouse, sunglasses perched like armor. "You think this is a game?" she shouted. I stood on the porch, coffee in hand, calm as ever. "You really should start making appointments before showing up on private property, Karen." She jabbed a finger toward me. "My reputation is ruined. I've had reporters calling me, asking if the price is a typo. Do you understand what you've done?" I raised an eyebrow. I'd imagine it similar to how I felt when I found a stranger's for sale sign on my lawn. Her lips tightened. "You think you're clever, but I'm not stupid. I've already contacted the HOA board about your harassment. I laughed. You mean the same board where your best friend, Marlene, is treasurer and your husband accidentally signs the landscaping contracts? I'm sure they'll be objective. That hit home. Her face flushed, a telltale sign I'd struck the nerve she didn't want anyone touching. She stormed off muttering something about lawyers and defamation. I spent the rest of the morning pretending to work on my deck while secretly enjoying the neighborhood chaos. From across the lake, I saw two couples stop in front of Karen's home, pointing at it and laughing. They even took selfies with her for sale sign, one she'd forgotten to remove in the panic. Around noon, my friend Mason dropped by with a six-pack. "Dude," he said, cracking open a beer, "you broke the HOA internet. My wife said Karen's meltdown last night could be heard 3 houses away. Apparently, she was on the phone screaming at Zillow's customer service for 2 hours." I chuckled. Maybe next time she'll think twice before trying to sell someone else's cabin. Mason grinned. "She's threatening to sue you, by the way." "Oh, I hope she does," I said. "Then I get to subpoena all her fake improvement invoices." By evening, the listing had been taken down, but the damage was permanent. Screenshots were circulating everywhere. People in town who'd never even heard of our HOA now knew Karen's name. Worse for her, the local news station decided to run a small segment on online listing errors. They blurred her address but showed her house front and center. That night, I got an email from the HOA board titled "Formal Notice of Concern." I opened it, expecting the usual sanctimonious nonsense, and I wasn't disappointed. "Dear resident, it has come to our attention that you may be involved in a digital prank causing distress to a fellow homeowner. This behavior does not align with the community spirit we aim to foster. Please refrain from any further actions that could harm reputations or diminish neighborhood cohesion. Respectfully, the Lake Pine Ridge HOA Board." I laughed out loud. The same people who'd ignored Karen's harassment for years were now worried about her feelings. I wrote back, "Dear Board, you might want to rephrase, fellow homeowner. Trespassing on my property twice and impersonating me to a realtor sounds like grounds for removal, not sympathy. Also, maybe check your own bylaws about defamation before accusing residents of digital pranks. Warm regards, the actual owner of the cabin you tried to sell." An hour later, I received another email, this one from an unknown address. It was a photo attachment of my cabin, taken from across the road, time-stamped that very evening. The message read, "You're playing with fire." I stared at it for a long time. The cabin lights were on in the photo, meaning whoever took it was hiding in the woods while I was home. That was my line. Karen could gossip, fine me, send letters, but the moment she or anyone from her camp started lurking near my house at night, it turned from petty feud to threat. The next morning, I went straight to the sheriff's substation. Deputy Howard, a tall, balding man who'd grown up in town, looked at the photo and frowned. "You think it's her?" he asked. "Either her or one of her HOA disciples," I said. "They're obsessed with control. I wouldn't put it past her." He sighed. "We've had other complaints about her. Couple years back, she was caught sneaking into a neighbor's garage to inspect their paint color." I blinked. "She broke into a garage?" "Claimed she was doing her duty as HOA president. We gave her a warning, but nothing stuck. Nobody wanted to file charges." "Well, I'm not nobody," I said. "I'm filing." He nodded. "We'll make an incident report. I'll send a cruiser by your place tonight just to be safe." That evening, when I got home, I installed extra motion lights around the property and connected my cameras to a live feed. By midnight, I saw headlights slow rolling past the driveway twice. The first car was unremarkable, a passing SUV, but the second? The white Lexus. I didn't go outside. I didn't need to. The camera caught everything. The next morning, I emailed the footage straight to the sheriff's office and CC'd the HOA board. My message was simple: if this continues, I'll file a restraining order. I suggest the HOA president be reminded that community oversight ends where my property line begins. No one replied. But by the afternoon, Karen's husband, Rick, showed up at my door. He was the opposite of her, quiet, polite, perpetually exhausted. "Look," he said, running a hand through his hair, "I'm sorry about all this. She's intense. I've tried to talk to her." "I appreciate it," I said. "But your wife crossed the line. Twice." He nodded miserably. "I know. She's under a lot of pressure with the HOA. Some of the board's been questioning her leadership after, well, the listing thing. She's terrified of losing control." "Maybe losing control would be the healthiest thing that could happen to her," I said. Rick gave a half smile. "You might be right. But she won't stop until she feels she's won." After he left, I thought about what he said. Karen's entire identity was built around control. Control over the HOA, the neighborhood image, even her husband's reputation. Take that away and she'd unravel. So I decided to help her along. I drafted a polite, official-looking document using the HOA's own template style: headers, watermark, signature line. The title read, "Notice of Temporary Leadership Suspension Pending Investigation." The body stated that due to recent misconduct and public embarrassment resulting from unauthorized property listings, the board was suspending Karen from all HOA duties pending review. I printed 10 copies and slipped them into every neighbor's mailbox after dark. By sunrise, the neighborhood was on fire again, figuratively. My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from people asking if the suspension was real. I played dumb, replying, "I heard something about it, yeah." By noon, Karen's Lexus screeched down the street again, this time stopping at every mailbox, tearing the letters out like a raccoon in a garbage can. From my porch, I could hear her yelling, "Who did this? Who spread this?" Her voice cracked with panic. The calm, calculating woman who'd strutted around with a clipboard last week was gone. This was pure desperation. That night, Mason called me laughing so hard he could barely breathe. "She's holding an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse. Half the board thinks she forged the letters herself to play victim." I couldn't help it, I laughed too. The irony was poetic. The Queen of Control had lost her kingdom to her own paranoia. But what I didn't expect came next. At 11:47 p.m., my cameras pinged again. The motion alert showed a figure on my porch, hooded, crouched by the door. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped quietly toward the window. The figure was holding something metallic, working at the handle. I shouted through the door, "Smile for the camera, Karen." The figure froze, then bolted into the woods. I sent the footage to the sheriff immediately. When I watched the replay, the reflection from the porch light caught her face for half a second. It wasn't Karen. It was Rick. The next morning began in a fog thicker than the lake mist that clung to the trees. I hadn't slept. I kept replaying the footage, pausing at that single frame, the unmistakable reflection of Rick's face in the glare of my porch light. The exhaustion in his eyes wasn't the look of a man vandalizing for sport. It was something worse. Desperation. Guilt. Maybe both. When the sun finally rose, I poured myself a cup of bitter black coffee and waited for the sheriff's call. It came at 8:14 a.m. sharp. Deputy Howard's voice was steady but cautious. "We checked the plates you gave us from your footage. Belongs to Rick Alden, Karen's husband. You want to press charges?" "Not yet," I said. "Something tells me he wasn't doing it for fun." Howard sighed. "If you're thinking of handling this yourself, don't. Let us talk to him." "I'm not doing anything illegal," I said. "Just curious what makes a man break into his wife's enemy's house." After hanging up, I sat on the porch and watched the lake burn orange in the morning light. By mid-morning, a white SUV rolled up the drive. Not the Lexus. Karen's secondary vehicle, the one she used when she wanted to appear low profile. She stepped out wearing sunglasses, hair perfectly set, the kind of outfit that screamed "I'm holding it together" even when she clearly wasn't. She didn't even make it halfway up the steps before snapping, "You called the cops on my husband?" I set down my mug. He was trying to break into my cabin, Karen. Her nostrils flared. He wasn't breaking in. He was leaving a letter. I stared. At midnight? With a crowbar. She hesitated, too long. He panicked. He thought you'd twist it. I leaned back. Karen, let me make this simple. I've got cameras now, real ones with cloud backup. If either of you step foot on my property again, I'll have you both arrested. No more letters. No more visits. No more realtors. She crossed her arms. You think you can intimidate me with threats? You don't belong here. People are tired of your attitude. You're toxic to this neighborhood. I smiled faintly. Funny. The neighborhood seemed to find plenty of entertainment in your $1 listing. She flinched. That wound was still fresh. That was malicious and cruel. Do you know how many calls I got from strangers? Do you know what it's like to have your address on the internet? I tilted my head. Yeah, actually. I know exactly what that's like. Because you did the same thing to me, twice. She opened her mouth to speak but stopped. For a flicker of a moment, something almost human passed across her face. Shame, maybe, but it vanished behind the practiced veneer of superiority. This isn't over, she said, voice low. I'm counting on it, I replied. When she left, I noticed something odd. Her SUV's back seat was piled high with folders, binders, and a rolled-up poster board. It wasn't until later that I realized she was heading straight to the HOA clubhouse. By noon, word spread through the grapevine. Karen had called an emergency board meeting. Mason texted me a photo from the clubhouse parking lot. Every member's car lined up like it was Judgment Day. Underneath he wrote, "She's going scorched earth." Curiosity got the better of me. I logged into the HOA's public livestream archive, the one they used for transparency since a previous scandal. Sure enough, Karen had forgotten to disable it. The meeting began with her pounding a gavel so hard it sounded like gunfire. "We are under attack," she declared. "Our community values are being undermined by online bullies and malicious residents who think they're above the rules." She didn't name me at first, but it didn't take long. "Certain individuals," she said, glaring into the camera like a villain caught mid-monologue, "have taken it upon themselves to publicly humiliate this board and spread false information about my leadership. I propose an emergency vote to impose new security measures, including surveillance approval and mandatory property inspections." There it was. The power grab. She was doubling down. One board member, an older man named Cliff, spoke up hesitantly. "Karen, with all due respect, people are saying you trespassed onto his property, twice, and that your husband was caught last night. Maybe it's time we take a step back." Karen shot him a look that could have melted stone. "Are you accusing my husband of criminal behavior?" "I'm saying," Cliff replied carefully, "this isn't how we should handle neighborhood disputes." She slammed the gavel again. "We wouldn't have these disputes if people followed the HOA rules." The room fell into awkward silence. I could almost hear the unease spreading through the board. They weren't used to seeing their queen so openly unravel. Then came the best part. Marlene, her longtime ally, cleared her throat. "Karen, maybe it's not the best time to expand surveillance. People are nervous. That fake suspension letter made everyone paranoid." Karen glared. "You think I made that up?" Marlene hesitated. "Didn't you?" The look on Karen's face was priceless, a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. "You all think I forged it?" she asked. No one answered. That silence was its own verdict. I closed my laptop with a satisfied smile. She was imploding. That evening, as twilight fell over the lake, I sat outside listening to crickets when headlights appeared again. This time not Karen's, but Rick's old pickup. He parked at the bottom of the drive and approached slowly, hands raised like a man surrendering. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said quietly. "I believe that more than I believe your wife's inspection rights," I replied. He gave a humorless chuckle. "Fair. Look, I wanted to apologize. I was trying to tape a letter to your door last night. An apology from both of us. She wanted to make peace, but she didn't want to admit fault. I thought if I left it anonymously, you might take it seriously. I folded my arms. You had a crowbar. I was prying off the old flyer from when she tried to sell your place, he said. Didn't want it to look like we were doubling down. That part, at least, I could verify later. The nail holes on the post were still visible. He sighed. I'm stuck in the middle of her storms. You know she didn't always used to be like this? When she first joined the HOA, she actually cared about keeping the lake clean, maintaining trails. Then she got power, and it changed her. Every complaint became personal. Every argument was about control. I said nothing, letting him talk. She's scared now, he continued. People are turning on her. She thinks everyone's out to humiliate her. I'm not asking you to forgive her, but maybe, don't push her any further. She's unraveling. Rick, I said, you might want to consider who's standing next to her when she finally falls apart. Because she's not just unraveling. She's detonating. He nodded solemnly. You're probably right. After he left, I couldn't shake the image of him. The quiet husband trying to hold back a storm he didn't create. The next morning, the storm arrived. A sheriff's cruiser pulled into my driveway just after sunrise. Deputy Howard stepped out, holding a clipboard. Morning, he said. We've got a problem. Karen had filed a harassment complaint against me. She'd claimed I'd engaged in a prolonged campaign of online defamation and psychological intimidation. She'd even printed screenshots from the fake suspension letter and the $1 listing, presenting them as cyber harassment. Howard rolled his eyes. We have to follow up, but between you and me, this won't stick. Still, she's serious. She's talking about filing a civil suit. I smiled thinly. Then it's time I returned the favor. That afternoon, I contacted a lawyer, an old friend of mine named Dana who specialized in property and defamation cases. After I showed her the evidence, the trespassing, the fake realtors, the photos, the video, she laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. This is the most textbook case of projection I've ever seen, she said. We'll file a cease and desist first. If she keeps it up, we hit her with a harassment suit. Perfect, I said. But I want her to see it coming. Dana smirked. You want to make it sting. Exactly. That evening, I printed a large sign and staked it by my driveway. Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted. HOA presidents included. By dawn, the whole neighborhood had seen it. Within hours, my phone buzzed again, this time from Mason. Bro, she's losing it. She's outside screaming that you're slandering her publicly. She's calling an emergency neighborhood vote to censure you. Good, I said. Let her dig deeper. That night, as I watched the reflection of moonlight ripple across the lake, I realized I'd set the perfect trap. Karen thought she was winning by fighting louder. But in truth, every shout, every outburst, every official tantrum was building a paper trail, one I'd use to bury her legally. The final straw came 2 days later, when she posted on the community forum, "Certain residents are acting like anarchists. They don't respect order, authority, or decency. If you see them, report them." She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. But she made one fatal mistake. She attached a photo. A zoomed-in shot of me on my porch, clearly taken from the wood. And that was the moment Karen's little war turned criminal, for good. I sent the screenshot to Deputy Howard within 30 seconds of seeing it. The image wasn't subtle. My cabin porch lit by the golden edge of sunset, my face caught mid-sip of coffee, camera clearly hidden behind the tree-lean. Whoever took it had been standing no more than 30 feet from my window. That, I wrote in the email, is your criminal evidence. Trespassing. Harassment. Maybe stalking. Howard called me 5 minutes later. We got the report, he said. Already confirmed the post came from Karen's HOA account. That means it's tied to her IP address. You want us to file? File everything, I said. If she's going to turn the neighborhood into a circus, let's sell tickets. By that afternoon, a deputy had knocked on Karen's door with a formal summons. I didn't see it myself, but Mason recorded the aftermath from across the street. Karen came storming out, hair wild, voice cracking as she screamed that the police were conspiring with criminals. The deputy didn't argue. He just handed her the paper and walked off like a man who'd seen this show before. The neighborhood was buzzing by evening. The group chat exploded with speculation. Some people defended her, she's just passionate. But most were done with her antics. Screenshots of the porch photos circulated like wildfire. "This is beyond HOA business," someone wrote. "This is creepy." Another neighbor, someone I barely knew, chimed in. "She took photos of my kids last summer during pool construction, said it was for compliance. Now I'm wondering." By the end of the day, half the neighborhood had turned on her. But I didn't celebrate yet. Because if there's one thing I'd learned about Karen, it's that she didn't lose quietly. The following morning, I woke to find something tucked under my door, an envelope, no return address. Inside was a printed letter, typed in bold serif font, almost official looking. "You've started a war you can't win. This community will never side with a troublemaker. You'll regret trying to destroy me." There was no signature, but I didn't need one. The scent of her perfume, something floral and sharp, like a weapon disguised as a flower, lingered on the paper. I scanned the letter, added it to my growing file of evidence, and sent copies to Dana, my lawyer. She called back laughing. "She actually wrote a threat letter? Bless her heart. That's intimidation. Keep it coming." "She's not smart," I said, "but she's relentless." "That's fine," Dana replied. "Relentless people leave trails." That night, the HOA clubhouse lights burned late. I could see them from my porch across the lake, bright rectangles glowing against the dark trees. I had a feeling the board was holding another emergency meeting. Mason confirmed it an hour later with a text. "She's trying to impeach you as a member. Says you violated community harmony." I replied, "Perfect. That means she's still pretending I'm part of her kingdom." The next morning, I got the official notice taped to my mailbox. Immediate disciplinary hearing, alleged conduct unbecoming of a homeowner. It was written in the same pompous HOA tone, dripping with bureaucratic self-importance. They wanted me to appear before the board that Friday to discuss my behavior. So I did. The clubhouse smelled like lemon cleaner and tension. Karen sat at the head of the long oak table, papers stacked neatly in front of her like ammunition. The rest of the board looked uneasy, some fidgeting, some whispering. "Mr. Hart," Karen began, voice syrupy but brittle, "thank you for joining us. We've received numerous complaints about your online conduct and general hostility toward the association." "You mean the association that trespassed on my property, listed my house without consent, and took pictures of me through my window?" I asked. She gave a tight smile. "Exaggerations don't help your case." I leaned back in my chair. "Then maybe facts will." I pulled out a folder and placed a thick stack of printed emails, photos, and video stills on the table. Trespassing evidence, harassment letters, surveillance logs, and oh yes, the sheriff's summons with your name on it. The board members craned their necks. Karen's face paled. "This is irrelevant to the matter at hand," she said quickly. Cliff, the older man from the last meeting, spoke up. "Actually, it seems very relevant. If you've been contacting realtors without permission and taking photos of residents, that's serious." Karen's jaw twitched. "Those claims are unsubstantiated." I cut her off. "They're timestamped. Sheriff's Department has the originals." The room went quiet. Even Marlene looked uncomfortable now, fiddling with her pen. Finally, Cliff cleared his throat. "I think we should postpone this hearing until we can review all this." Karen slammed her hand on the table. "You're all cowards. You're letting him ruin me." I stood. "You're doing that just fine on your own." She shot up too, face red, trembling. "You're not fit to live here. You're a menace." Then vote me out, I said calmly. Go ahead. Make it official. Her hands shook as she looked around the room, waiting for support. No one moved. Not a single raised hand. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen looked small, deflated. She sank back into her chair and stared down at her papers like they might reassemble her authority. I walked out, slow and deliberate, the way you leave a courtroom after a win. 2 days later, I got word that the board had voted to suspend her pending review. Cliff was acting president now. The neighborhood had reached its breaking point. But just when I thought it was over, Karen did something so desperate, so insane, it almost impressed me. Late Friday night, Mason called. "You're not gonna believe this," he said breathlessly. "Karen just showed up on Channel 7 News." "What?" "She gave an interview. Said she's being targeted by online vigilantes and corrupt law enforcement. She named you, man, full name and all." My stomach dropped. "She what?" "Yup. Said you're a dangerous recluse who's weaponizing technology to bully honest homeowners. She even waved around that fake suspension letter as proof of cyber warfare." The anchor looked ready to walk off set. I turned on the TV. There she was, Karen in a pink blazer, voice trembling with self-righteous fury. "This man," she said, "has manipulated our community, hacked our records, and tried to destroy my reputation because I dared to enforce rules. I fear for my safety." I sat in stunned silence. It was madness, but it was public madness. And now she'd crossed the line into outright defamation. The next morning, Dana called me, voice practically singing with excitement. "She just gave us everything we need. A recorded, broadcast statement full of provable lies. We can go after her for defamation and harassment now." I exhaled slowly. "Let's do it." We filed within 48 hours. The lawsuit was straightforward. Multiple counts of harassment, defamation, trespass, and emotional distress. I attached the video clips, emails, the HOA notices, everything. The sheriff's office added their report of the stalking photo as supporting evidence. By the time Karen received her legal notice, she was a local punchline. People had started parodying her news clip, replacing her name with HOA Karen, and remixing her speech with laugh tracks. One meme had her face over a movie poster, Karen vs. The Cabin, Dawn of Stupidity. But the fallout went deeper. Realtors blacklisted her. The HOA's insurance provider froze funding pending investigation. Her husband, poor Rick, finally packed a bag and moved out, at least temporarily. Mason said he saw him loading boxes into his truck one night, looking like a man escaping a slow-motion car crash. Karen, meanwhile, vanished for 3 days. No one saw her. The HOA clubhouse lights stayed off. The group chat went quiet. Even the birds seemed to take a break from gossip. Then, on the 4th morning, I woke to the sound of hammering. I stepped outside and saw it. Across the lake, Karen on her front lawn, erecting a massive wooden sign taller than she was. Bright red letters shouted across the neighborhood, "Beware of cyberbully. Neighbor is under police investigation. Protect your property." I laughed so hard I had to lean against my porch railing. The audacity was Shakespearean. But by noon, her sign was gone. Sheriff Howard had stopped by and confiscated it himself under a court order, public defamation and nuisance display. He dropped by my cabin afterward, amused. "You sure know how to attract entertainment," he said. "I just bought popcorn," I replied. "Want some?" He chuckled. "Honestly? This might end with her in cuffs. She's refusing to comply with the order to stop contacting you." I stared out at the lake, calm and gleaming under the afternoon sun. "She's not done yet," I said. "But she's close." Howard nodded. "When people like her lose control, they only have 2 gears left: denial and destruction." He wasn't wrong. Because 2 nights later, Karen decided to switch gears. And this time, it wasn't just about my cabin. It was about the entire lake. I first noticed something was wrong when the lake started dropping. Not dramatically at first, just an inch or two over the course of a week. I thought it might have been the early heat wave. But then Mason called one evening, voice low like he'd stumbled onto a secret. "You need to see this," he said. By the time I got to his place across the ridge, the sun was setting behind the pines, painting the water copper. Mason led me down to the shoreline, where the mud was exposed in wide, uneven strips. "It's not natural," he said. "Every house on this side's noticing it. Rick came by this morning, said Karen's been sneaking down to the old maintenance dock every night." "The one by the storm drain?" I asked. He nodded. "The gate's been unlocked. He thinks she's opening the runoff valve." I blinked. "She's draining the lake?" Mason shrugged helplessly. "He said she's convinced you're poisoning it with something, digital toxins or whatever that means. She told people your solar panels are polluting the water." I stared out at the shimmering, shrinking surface. The absurdity almost made me laugh, until I saw the faint metallic glint near the far bank, the padlock from the old storm control valve lying in the mud. That night, I took my flashlight and drove around the lake to the access point, a rusted metal grate over a concrete channel that funneled runoff toward the municipal drains. The padlock was gone. The valve wheel, which should have been chained shut, had been turned halfway open. A steady stream of water gurgled out beneath it, disappearing into the pipe. I called Howard immediately. He met me within 30 minutes, flashlight in hand, uniform half unbuttoned like I'd caught him mid-dinner. "Good God," he muttered, inspecting the valve. "If she did this deliberately, that's property damage. Environmental, too." "She's unraveling," I said. "She'll do anything to make me look guilty, even if it means destroying the lake." Howard took photos and said he'd file a report with the county environmental unit. "Don't confront her," he warned. "Let us handle it." I nodded, but I didn't mean it. The next morning, Karen's driveway was full, 3 SUVs, 2 sedans, all with HOA decals. An emergency restoration committee, no doubt. I walked down the street, just in time to see her standing in front of them like a general at war, waving a clipboard. "This is sabotage," she barked. "He's tampering with the runoff system to flood our lots. We need a public statement before the media twists this." "Media?" I asked, stepping forward. "You mean before they find out you were caught on camera at the maintenance dock?" The group turned. Karen froze. Then her expression slid into something plastic and serene. "Oh, look who's here," she said sweetly. "The man of the hour." I gestured toward her clipboard. "How's the propaganda coming?" Her lips curled. "I don't have to defend myself to someone under investigation." I laughed. "Karen, the only one under investigation is you. Sheriff's office found your fingerprints on the valve handle." Her mask cracked. "That's impossible." "Then I'm sure you won't mind when they subpoena your security footage," I said. "You know, the one you never told the board about? The hidden cameras you keep by the clubhouse and along the lake path." That hit her hard. I'd only learned about them the night before from Rick, who'd stopped by looking defeated. He'd told me everything, how she'd installed unauthorized cameras to catch trespassers, how she'd spent HOA money to pay for them, how she'd even saved clips of me walking my dog as evidence. Now her face betrayed her guilt. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Cliff stepped forward. "Karen, is that true?" She started to speak, but nothing came out. I watched her lips tremble, the realization sinking in that she'd lost them completely. By the next day, the board had issued an emergency vote. Effective immediately, Karen Alden was removed as president of the Lake Pine Ridge HOA pending full investigation. The news traveled fast. By sunset, people were lighting sparklers by the lake like it was Independence Day. But I wasn't celebrating, because part of me knew she wouldn't go quietly. That night, I got a call from Rick. His voice was broken, tired. "She's gone," he said. "Gone where?" "She packed a suitcase and left around 8. Took her laptop, her files, said she needed to finish this her way." She looked different. Cold. Not angry, just hollow. Did she say where she was going? Only that she had one last meeting. Meeting with who? I don't know. After we hung up, I sat on the porch staring out over the dark water. The moon reflected in jagged streaks on the lowered lake surface. Somewhere out there, I could hear the faint clank of metal echoing from the maintenance dock again. I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. The trail to the dock was damp and narrow, lined with cattails whispering in the wind. When I reached the clearing, the beam of my light caught her instantly. Karen, kneeling by the valve, tools scattered around her. Her hair was loose, frizzy, her once perfect blouse streaked with mud. She was prying at the bolts with a wrench like she was dismantling a bomb. "Karen!" I shouted. She jumped, slipping on the slick concrete. The wrench clattered into the water. "You!" she hissed, standing up, face wild. "You did this! You made them hate me!" I took a step closer. "Karen, stop. You're making this worse for yourself. They were supposed to listen to me," she yelled. "I built this neighborhood. I made it perfect. And you," her voice cracked, "you turned everyone against me." I kept my voice calm. "Karen, the sheriff's already got a report on this valve. Walk away right now and maybe." "Maybe what?" she snapped. "Maybe they'll forgive me? Maybe they'll forget that my husband left, that my house is worth half what it was, that everyone laughs at me in the grocery store." She was shaking now, her fingers white around the valve wheel. "They think I'm crazy," she said softly. "Do you?" I paused. "No. I think you're terrified." That word landed like a stone. Her shoulders slumped. For a second I thought she might break down and cry. But instead she smiled, a strange, brittle smile. "Then you understand why I have to finish this." Before I could stop her, she spun the valve open. Water surged downward with a roar, sucking mud and debris into the drain like a whirlpool. The lake shuddered, its surface collapsing toward the outlet. I lunged forward and grabbed her arm, pulling her back from the edge as the current sprayed us both. She screamed, struggling, nails clawing at my sleeve. "You'll ruin everything!" I shouted over the noise. "I already did," she screamed back. Then she slipped. Her foot hit a slick patch, and she toppled sideways toward the churning hole. I grabbed her wrist, barely, but my boot slid too. For one terrifying second, both of us dangled over the torrent, the sound deafening. Then I yanked hard, dragging her backward onto the concrete. We lay there gasping, soaked, the valve still gushing behind us. Finally, I crawled over and slammed it shut with both hands. The water slowed, sputtered, stopped. Karen lay flat on her back, staring at the sky. "You shouldn't have saved me," she said quietly. I stood, breathing hard. "Someone had to." She laughed then, a hoarse, broken sound that barely resembled laughter. "They'll never forgive me," she whispered. "Maybe not," I said. "But you might still have time to forgive yourself." She didn't answer. Just stared at the stars reflected in the half-drained lake, her face unreadable. By the time Howard and his deputies arrived, she was sitting silently on the dock, hands folded, mud drying on her clothes. She didn't resist when they approached. I gave my statement and went home as dawn broke over the trees. The waterline was still low, streaked with new scars where the lake had receded. Birds hovered uncertainly near the shore, as if even they didn't recognize it anymore. 2 days later, Karen was formally charged with criminal mischief, environmental tampering, and trespassing. She was released on bail, but her reputation was beyond repair. The HOA voted unanimously to permanently ban her from leadership. Rick filed for divorce soon after. I thought that would be the end of it, but about a week later, I got a certified letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed neatly. "I thought about drowning that night. Then I realized that would make you the hero forever. So I didn't. But I will make sure you never forget me." No signature. I handed it to Howard the same day. He sighed. "We'll keep an eye out. She's on probation now. Any contact with you violates the restraining order." Still, the words lingered. That night, I sat on my porch again, watching the faint ripples in the recovering lake. The reflection of my cabin lights shimmered across the surface. For a long while, everything was calm. Then, just as I was about to head inside, I noticed something floating near the shore, half submerged, pale, square. It was a sign. The same sign she'd built before, the one confiscated by the sheriff. Beware of cyberbully. Someone had thrown it back into the water. For the first few nights after the sign washed up, I told myself it was coincidence. Maybe kids had dragged it out from wherever the sheriff stored it. Maybe the wind carried it. But deep down, I knew better. Karen was still out there. Whether she was living with relatives, squatting somewhere, or just hiding, I could feel her presence like static in the air. By day, everything seemed normal again. The HOA board under Cliff's leadership was surprisingly cooperative. They removed half the pointless regulations Karen had invented. No more flagpole symmetry. No more deck color compliance. The neighborhood felt lighter. You could see people smiling again, mowing lawns without fear of noise citations. It was like an entire ecosystem had exhaled. But every night, as the sun disappeared behind the lake, I'd hear something. Faint footsteps on gravel, the soft crunch of pine needles, sometimes the brief glint of metal near the tree-line. My motion lights would trip and reveal nothing. The security cameras would flicker once, as if someone knew how to avoid their full gaze. I'd wake up to little things moved. My porch chair turned slightly, the mailbox flag raised when no mail had come, the cabin door handle sticky like someone had tried it. She wasn't gone. She was watching. On the fifth night, the cameras finally caught something. At 2:37 a.m., a hooded figure appeared on the edge of the frame. The face was hidden, but the posture, the stiff, almost mechanical stance, was unmistakable. Karen. She was holding something metallic in her hand. I paused the footage and zoomed in. A hammer. I called Howard at dawn. "She's back," I said. He sighed. "We'll increase patrols, but she's walking a fine line. As long as she doesn't step onto your property, she's not technically violating probation. It's harassment, but proving intent's tricky." I clenched my jaw. "So she can stalk me indefinitely as long as she stays 3 feet off the driveway?" "I didn't write the law," he said. "Just enforce it." When I hung up, I realized something chilling. Karen didn't want to win anymore. She wanted to haunt. She wanted me to live like she did, isolated, paranoid, defined by conflict. She wasn't fighting for control now. She was fighting for significance. That evening, Mason came over. He'd seen the sign too and heard about the latest sighting. "She's losing her mind," he said. "You should get out for a while. Take a trip, clear your head." "I'm not running from her," I said. "That's what she wants." He frowned. "Man, this isn't a movie. You don't need to prove anything. Let the system deal with her." "The system's been dealing with her for years," I said. "And look where that got everyone." He sighed and left me with a look that was equal parts concern and resignation. 2 nights later, I found the dead fish. They were scattered across my dock, maybe a dozen of them, still fresh, their scales glittering under the porch light. The smell hit like a punch, raw, chemical, wrong. Someone had soaked them in gasoline. My stomach turned as I realized what that meant. She was sending a message. The lake was hers once, her symbol of control. Now she was poisoning it piece by piece, literally and figuratively. I took photos, bagged one of the fish in plastic, and handed it to Howard the next morning. He was furious. "This crosses the line," he said. "We'll get a warrant to search her residence." "Where is she staying?" "An aunt's house on the West End," he said. "Been quiet, until now." 2 days later, the warrant went through. The deputies searched her room and found everything: notes, photos of my cabin printed and pinned like a detective's board, scribbled plans about restoring authority, and a list of neighbors labeled enemies of order. My name topped the list. She'd been keeping a journal too. Howard read a few entries aloud when I visited the station. "He doesn't understand what he's done. He broke the symmetry. The lake was supposed to reflect perfection. I'll fix it, even if I have to drain it all. Howard set the notebook down. She's obsessed. But she's not insane, she's strategic. She's convinced she's still saving the neighborhood. They confiscated her computer, her files, and issued a restraining order renewal. For a week, things were quiet again. Too quiet. Then came the fire. It was just after midnight when Mason called, panic in his voice. "Dude, look outside." I ran to the porch. A glow pulsed from across the water, orange, alive, wrong. Karen's old house was burning. Flames leapt from the roof, reflecting in the lake like a bonfire of vanity. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I drove around the lake with the others who'd gathered, the smell of smoke thick and sharp in the air. The firefighters were already there, spraying foam over the collapsing structure. The siding was melting, the windows blackened. Cliff stood nearby, shouting into his phone. "She said it herself. I told you she was off the rails." I turned to Howard, who'd just arrived. "Is she inside?" He shook his head grimly. "No sign. Neighbors said she moved her stuff out this afternoon. Probably left it as a message." A message. Of course. I knew what it meant before I even said it. "She's burning her past," I whispered. By dawn, only the charred frame of the house remained, a skeletal outline against gray smoke. The air was heavy, wet with ash. Reporters swarmed, snapping photos, asking questions. "Is it true the former HOA president is under investigation? Was this related to the lake incident?" Howard eventually found me leaning against my truck, exhausted. "We'll find her," he said quietly. "If she's still in the area, she'll slip up." But I wasn't sure she would. Not yet. Because that night, as I sat alone by the cabin window, the power flickered twice, then died completely. The generator clicked on automatically, humming like a heartbeat in the silence. A few minutes later, the motion sensor light outside tripped. I checked the monitor. There she was, standing at the edge of the yard, framed by the floodlight. Karen. Her face pale and expressionless, hair hanging loose, eyes locked on the cabin. She didn't move, didn't shout, just watched. I didn't call Howard. I just sat there, watching her watch me, two ghosts trapped in the same unfinished war. After what felt like hours, she turned and vanished into the trees. When the deputies combed the woods the next morning, they found nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks, no sign of her. Just an envelope nailed to a tree facing my porch. "I'm not gone." Howard ordered extra patrols. Cliff installed new cameras by the clubhouse. The neighbors grew paranoid again, locking gates, double-checking alarms. The sense of safety we'd briefly regained evaporated overnight. A week later, the county held a town hall meeting about the lake incidents. Everyone showed up, the board, residents, even a few reporters. I sat near the back, trying to stay invisible. The new HOA leadership outlined new security policies, cleanup projects, and lake restoration efforts. It was almost peaceful, until the lights went out. The room went pitch dark for 5 seconds. When they flickered back on, every screen at the front of the hall displayed the same image: Karen's face. It was a freeze frame from her Channel 7 interview, mouth mid-sentence, eyes furious. Beneath it flashed a message in red. "Liars drown in their own reflections." Screams filled the room. Someone unplugged the projector. Cliff shouted for calm. I just sat there, numb. The timing, the symbolism, it all fit her. The reflection, the lake, the obsession with symmetry. She'd hacked them somehow or paid someone to. The sheriff's office treated it as cyber harassment. The media called it a psychological campaign. The neighbors called it proof she was possessed. But to me, it felt like a confession. That night, I walked down to the shore alone. The water had almost returned to its normal level, still and silver under the moonlight. I stood there listening to the frogs, the soft lap of ripples against the dock. For a moment, I thought maybe, finally, it was over. Then I saw it. Across the lake, on the far shore near the burnt remains of her house, a light flickered. Not fire this time, flashlight beams. Slow, deliberate, tracing across the ashes, sweeping toward the waterline. Then a voice carried faintly over the lake. A woman's voice, calm and steady. "You can't erase me, Michael." My stomach dropped. She was there. I shouted, "Karen, it's over. You need help." Her answer came as a whisper barely louder than the wind. "You need balance. That's what the lake was for." Then the light went out. I stood there for a long time, staring into the dark water until I couldn't tell where the reflection ended and the real world began. The next morning, Howard found fresh footprints near the burnt property, barefoot, leading straight into the lake. They searched for 2 days. Divers combed every corner. They found nothing. No body. No clothes. No Karen. And every night since, when the moon hits the lake just right, I still see ripples move across the surface with no wind, like something stirring just beneath, still trying to fix the reflection. 3 weeks passed without a trace of her. The sheriff's office declared Karen officially missing. The local news ran somber footage of the lake and her burned house, pairing them with stock photos of smiling neighbors to fill airtime. They called it a tragic story of community conflict gone too far. Neighbors whispered their own theories. She fled to Florida, she changed her name, she drowned herself in the lake she once ruled. Everyone had an answer, and every answer was wrong. Because Karen wasn't the type to disappear. She was the type to linger, to haunt the edges of people's lives like a persistent error that refused to delete. At first, I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. The nights were getting longer, the lake colder. Maybe it was just the wind echoing off the water, the creak of settling wood in the cabin. But then little things began happening again, just subtle enough to question, just consistent enough to feel deliberate. The motion lights on my porch would flicker on for a few seconds at 2 a.m. every night, like a silent knock. My phone would buzz with anonymous calls. No sound, no number, just static. One morning, I found a single footprint in the mud by the dock, smaller than mine, heel sharp like a stiletto. I called Howard. "You sure she's gone?" He sighed. "We dragged the lake twice. Nothing. We can't chase ghosts, Mike." "She's not a ghost," I said. "She's patient." He paused. "If she's out there, she's staying out of sight. But if anything happens, you call me first." After we hung up, I walked down to the water's edge. The lake looked almost normal again, mirror smooth, reflecting the line of houses across the shore. You'd never guess how close it had come to draining completely. But I couldn't stop thinking about her final words that night. "You need balance." That evening, the HOA held a candlelight vigil for closure. It was Cliff's idea, part healing, part PR stunt. The whole neighborhood gathered near the clubhouse. Even the press came, cameras rolling as everyone lit floating candles and released them onto the water. When my turn came, I knelt by the dock, struck a match, and lit mine. The small flame flickered weakly in the breeze. I pushed it onto the lake, where it joined 100 others drifting toward the center. The reflections wavered like fireflies trapped under glass. "Feels weird, doesn't it?" Mason said behind me. "What does?" "Pretending she's gone." I nodded. "Yeah. She's too proud to be gone." We both watched the candles float into the darkness until they blurred together into one glowing mass. It should have been peaceful. But as I looked closer, I noticed something strange. The current had shifted. The candles weren't drifting randomly, they were moving in a slow spiral, tightening around a single point near the middle of the lake, like they were being pulled. Mason frowned. "You see that?" Before I could answer, a faint ripple spread from the center, disturbing the reflection. "Just a fish," I told myself. "Just nature doing its thing." But then the nearest candle sank suddenly, flames snuffed out. Then another. Then 3 more. Within seconds, half the candles were gone. The crowd murmured nervously. Cliff tried to laugh it off, saying it was just wind currents, but even he sounded unsure. The remaining flames scattered apart, their light stretching across the water like veins. That night, the wind howled harder than usual. I double-checked every lock, every camera. Around midnight, the power flickered again. When it came back, my phone's screen lit up on its own. A text from an unknown number. Still watching. My heart thudded once hard. I typed back instantly, "Karen, stop. It's over." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. The next morning, Howard showed up looking exhausted. "We traced the number," he said. "Disposable phone. Bought 3 towns over 2 days ago. So she's alive." He rubbed his temple. "Or someone wants you to think she is." "Who else would know that phrase?" I said. "Still watching, that's her." He didn't argue. Just said he'd add it to the case file and left. Over the next few days, the messages continued. Short, unnerving, always at night. "Did you miss me?" "The lake remembers. You never thanked me for saving you." I stopped sleeping. Every creak felt like her footstep. Every shadow across the blinds looked like her silhouette. I started keeping a baseball bat by the bed, not because I thought I'd need it, but because I couldn't not have it. Then came the night the water pump failed. The cabin went dead silent, the hum of running water gone. When I stepped outside to check the breaker, I saw it immediately. Mud tracks across the back deck leading straight to the pump housing. The casing was open, wires cut clean through. And lying on top of the panel was a small, rusted key. It took me a moment to recognize it. The same kind of key used for the storm valve. The one she'd used to drain the lake. I called Howard, but before I could explain, I heard something faint in the distance. A soft hum, mechanical, coming from the far shore. The old maintenance dock. I grabbed my flashlight and started driving. By the time I reached the clearing, the sound was louder, a low mechanical groan echoing from the concrete drain. The valve was spinning again, water rushing down in torrents. And standing next to it, half hidden by mist, was a figure. For a second, I thought it was Karen. The frame, the stance, it was her. But as I got closer, the light caught the man's face. "Rick." He looked gaunt, sleepless, eyes red. "Rick!" I shouted over the roar. "What the hell are you doing?" He turned toward me slowly, face pale in the flashlight beam. "She told me to," he said flatly. "What?" "She came to me. Said the lake wasn't clean yet. Said we had to finish it." I froze. "Rick, she's gone." He shook his head. "No. She's in the water." I stepped closer carefully. "Rick, listen to me. You need to shut the valve before the whole shoreline collapses." "She said the reflection was broken," he whispered. "It has to match again." Then he lunged for the valve handle and turned it fully open. The drain roared like thunder, sucking water in a violent whirlpool. I rushed forward, grabbed his jacket, and yanked him back. The ground beneath us cracked, the edge of the dock breaking away. We fell hard, sliding toward the water. I scrambled up first and dragged him away from the edge. The current slowed, but not before half the dock vanished into the swirling hole. Rick lay on the ground, sobbing. "She's still talking to me," he said. "Every night. In the lake. She said she forgives me." I called Howard. They arrived within minutes, lights flashing across the wet trees. Rick didn't resist when they took him in. He just kept murmuring, "She's in the water. She's waiting." The county sealed off the drainage site the next morning. They welded the valve shut, poured concrete over the access gate, and posted warning signs. For the first time in months, the lake went still. No ripples, no disturbances. Just silence. A week later, I visited Rick in the psychiatric unit. He looked fragile but lucid. "They said she's dead," he told me quietly. "But she's not. When they drained the lake the first time, she left something there. Something alive." "What do you mean?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "You'll see when the reflection breaks again." After that, I stopped going. Some things aren't meant to be decoded. Life slowly began to normalize. The HOA restructured completely, Cliff resigned, and the community voted to dissolve the board entirely. The lake was now under county jurisdiction. No presidents, no committees, no Karens. But even with order restored, peace felt temporary. Because on certain nights, when the wind was still, the lake mirrored the sky perfectly, too perfectly. Not a ripple, not a sound, just glass. And if you stared long enough, you could see faint distortions, like movement beneath the surface. Last night, I stood there again. The moon hung full overhead, the reflection bright and clean. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining it all. Then I saw it, a shape, faint and fluid, rising from the dark below. Not human, not solid. Just a silhouette forming beneath the moon's reflection. A woman's outline, head tilted, hair floating. Then a whisper, soft as breath against my ear though I stood alone. You needed balance. The shape dissolved, ripples spreading across the surface, breaking the perfect mirror. I don't know if it was her voice or my mind finally catching up to the fear. But I know what I saw. Now, every time I pass the lake, I avoid looking too long. The surface feels like an eye that might blink if I stare back. And sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, the water whispers against the shore, repeating one word over and over. Till.